talk a little bit about the Chinese threat perception in India?
I think that's a very good question. The point at issue is that the media is putting up a lot of hype on the tactical intrusions from China. In this hype about the tactical intrusions, we are forgetting the strategic intrusions that China has constantly been making into our strategic backyard in South Asia. The key element of the Chinese threat is the Chinese nuclear and conventional military support to the regime in Pakistan. You see, they gave them the nuclear design of the weapon, and they tested the first Pakistani bomb in Lopnor in 1990. There's adequate data available on that. Next, they gave them the M9, M11 missiles. The bulk of their air force, the bulk of their, the army, the equipment, the capital equipment is all Chinese, right? And the fact of the matter is that they are using them as their surrogate in South Asia to keep India tied down, and to keep India confined to the South Asian sphere, so that you sort of are so engaged with them, with a truculent, hostile Pakistan, that your energies are all, distracted towards containing Pakistani threat itself. That is the first Chinese threat. The second Chinese threat is the long-term over-the-horizon threat, which is building up rapidly in terms of, one, the increase in Chinese military capability. Very simple mathematics. Our defense expenditure last year was $30 billion a year. The Chinese officially stated defense expenditure as published in the press, the Chinese language press, is $75 billion a year. The Pentagon estimates that this is a gross underestimation. It doesn't factor in their expenditure on research and development, etc., and a lot of other heads, very major heads. And the Chinese expenditure could well be in the region of $142 billion a year. So please compare $30 billion a year with $142 billion a year, and their defense budget is going up in 2 digits percentages every year. Please see the huge gaps that you are opening up in terms of vulnerability. In terms of, I would say, the primary threat is in terms of the air power differential that is coming up. Previously, the Chinese Air Force was a vintage Air Force. They had MiG-15, 17, MiG-19, MiG-21 equivalents of the Russian era. That is almost the Korean War era. Today, they are reducing, they relied on quantity rather than quality. Today, they are reducing, their quantity of these vintage planes, and they are going in for a fairly modern fleet, 3rd and 4th generation fighters. Now that's very important because that will make a difference. They will have about, by 2020, about 2,500 fighter aircraft, of the 3rd and 4th generation, and also they are developing their 5th generation fighters. We will have about 500. You see the differential gap. Previously we had less in quantity, but we made up in quality. We had a qualitative edge. Now that qualitative edge is gone, you have a qualitative and a quantitative disadvantage. And air power, as you know, is the key enabling factor these days. So that's the major threat. Second is your infrastructure. Please, his infrastructure capabilities in Tibet have gone up by 100%, because ever since he constructed the Golmo-Rhasa railway line, 8 trains per day keep coming in. Previously, the induction was only 3 road arteries. Now there is a railway line coming right up to Lhasa. He has plans to extend it to Nepal border and to your Sikkim-Tibet border, which is a major threat. There are 2 more railway lines coming in by 2030, 2040 time frame into Tibet. There are about 6 modern airfields which are capable of taking IL-76s, and within the next about 10 years or so, there are likely to be 60 airfields. Look at the infrastructure development. That increases his capability to sort of build force levels. Previously the talk was doing it in 2 seasons. Yeah. Now he'll do it in 1 season, and the very initial onslaught will be so strong that it will overwhelm all your possibilities of launching counterstrokes.
Yeah.
So I think there's a very significant threat which is coming up, and I think we need to look at it very seriously.
So politically, how can we counter that? Should we, in terms of partnerships with other countries, is that what you say?
Of course, you have to bandwagon. When the threat from China is becoming, because it is becoming something which you cannot counter on your own, in terms of matching the comprehensive national powers, you cannot do it in a standalone mode. So quite obviously you have to bandwagon with other powers in Asia which are equally concerned about the meteoric Chinese rise. Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, We have to bandwagon with these at the Asian level. And if you go to the larger global level, then you have to bandwagon with the United States, with Australia, with the so-called quadrilateral of democracies, which was mooted in the Bush era. Somehow we find that kind of rhetoric has gone down in the American side ever since the present administration took over. But of late, the recent developments again give us cause for hope that the Americans will find that the Chinese have been quite truculent. They haven't responded very well to their peace overtures, I mean, they snubbed Obama in the climate talks, and otherwise they have been fairly aggressive. So now you find the American reaction coming in terms of arms supply to Taiwan, and that long pended, Dalai Lamas calling on the American president. These are the kind of things which are coming up, and which sort of create a lot of scope for commonality of interests in terms of being able to manage the Chinese threat. We hope it is taken care of without anything more serious, but you have to manage it.
And the last question, sir, do you think there's a possibility for us to have a relationship with Taiwan and possibly Tibet? With
You see, politically, you've already committed that you recognize one China. To that extent, you cannot sort of make obvious overtures, because those would be taken as a very hostile kind of an act. But I mean, on the people-to-people level, at the economic level, after all, even China is trading with Taiwan.
Yeah.
So I think quite obviously, if China can trade with Taiwan, I mean, we have no problems. We should have no problems in being able to trade with them as a trading entity and have other cultural relations and the other relations in terms of, I would say there should be at the informal level a fair amount of intelligence sharing, because after all, those guys are the best China watchers.
Yeah.
So we should be able to profit from that.
But with China being so openly
Hostile.
with Pakistan and openly hostile, why should we?
Yes,
hold
I
back?
think over a period of time, China has to be made to realize that what it is doing is hurting our security interests a major way. And I would say one of the first countries that we should support, we should go out of the way to support, is Vietnam.
Okay.
Because Vietnam is far more crucial to us. For example, they've been asking for the BrahMos missile, and because of various reasons we haven't given them. Why can't we give them the Prithvi? That is, we don't have to get the Russian not to give them the Prithvi. I mean, we should give them the technology. We should do a tit for tat. What China has given missiles to Pakistan, we should give them the missiles equally, and all types of, weapon support, army to armed forces contact, joint exercises, joint training, so that we stiffen up, their back to be able to see that they are not alone and they are not overawed by the increasing Chinese might.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, sir.